plate as 7 Maresals. 4. 54. The supply of German material to Romania for Maresal production would have disrupted Germany's own production of 70 Panzer Force and around the same number of SD.KFZ251S. However, it would have allowed the creation of almost 490 Maresals, which the Germans believed was more important, thus agreeing on supplying materials. 55. 1944 report in which German officials state the Maresal was going to be a bothersome enemy, in grosser Hetze, for the Soviets. General Heinz Guderian, Inspector General of the German armored troops, was shown the M04 plans. He believed the M-tank was a vehicle capable of weakening enemy armored attacks. 3. One particular detail of the Maresal that impressed the German officials was its pedal steering system, according to Colonel Rajadovidsky. By steering the vehicle using the feet, the driver was also able to control the gun. Thighs allowed the crew to be reduced to 2 members. Lieutenant Colonel Ventsoff the Waffenamt stated that the Germans had also tried reducing their armored fighting vehicles' crews, but were unsuccessful in finding solutions for doing so. 56. The vehicle's development was slowed down by the Anglo-American bombardments, which had started in April 1944. 57. T had begun disrupting the production of the first series of vehicles, Series 0, which while originally expected in June was rescheduled for autumn 1944, 58, 50, and then January 1945. 59. As a result, parts of the Rojaifa works were moved from Bucharest to the area of Sibiu in Transylvania where production was to take place. 58, 60. In July, Rojaifa was bombarded again. During the bombardment, a guard soldier by the name of Tersescu Cristea had left the bomb shelter and went into the targeted Maresal workshop, managing to put out the fire and save the production tools and archive room from total destruction, while getting hurt in the process. 61. The final series of prototypes, M05 and M06, were built in March 1944. They were the 2 main prototypes, on which the serial production vehicles were based. While the M04 had still used the T60 suspension, these last 2 prototypes had entirely given up on the Soviet light tanks components. They were largely Romanian built, with part of the components being of German origin. M05 was completed in May and tested that same month. It impressed the attending German officials by outperforming a Stu-G3 that it competed against. 4, 5. The later testing stages involving M05 occurred in August and September 1944, in the immediate aftermath of King Michael's coup, which overthrew the pro-Axis Antonescu and put Romania on the Allied side. 58, 62. On the 31st of August 1944, it was decided to complete the first batch of serial production vehicles, Series 0, whose development had begun during spring 58, 63, but to suspend production of the later series. The Soviet Armistice Commission imposed a secret additional protocol on the original armistice on 26 October through which the Mechanized Troops Command, Komandamental Trupalamoto Mechanizate, was disbanded, bringing the Maresal project to an end, just as Series 0 was nearing completion. 64, 65, 66, 67. After this point, the Maresal is not known to have seen action or any kind of service. What happened to their vehicles is unknown, but it is possible that the Soviets had either confiscated or destroyed all completed examples of the Maresal, according to Mark Axworthy. 2. Trials had shown the Maresal to be a promising vehicle that was to have a successful service life, with the Germans being the ones who praised it the most. 2. However, there were also critics, especially among high-ranking Romanian officials. 9. Historians Charles Clement and Vladimir Frantsev describe the tank destroyer as having been advanced for its time. 68. The only known mention of the vehicle after this point is a report from the 1st of November, 1944, which stated that the project as the Maresal was referred to was not to fall out of interest, since its production was not out of question even after the end of the war. 62. See below for more details regarding each Maresal variant's history and characteristics. Serial production. Following the October 1943 testing of M01, M02 and M03, Major Angel and the director of the Rogifer Works were sent to tour several German factories to get information on the latest aspects of tank development. They concluded that the Maresal design solution was correct. Preparations for mass production began in November 1943. To this end, a commission was sent to France to order 1,000 Hotchkiss engines, and a Romanian technician was sent to Germany to coordinate the importation of other components. 34. 69. In February 1944, Romania managed to secure contracts with suppliers in France, Sweden and Switzerland for tank parts. 4. 70. The Germans also offered to assist Romania by sending specialists to the Rogifer Works and supplying necessary components, including gun optics, armored plates, and radio sets. It was planned to gradually assimilate licenses for all imported items, so Romania could carry on the production process on its own. 71. The first Series 0 of 10 vehicles was near completed. Due to the bombing of Romania, its completion date kept on being pushed away from the original June 1944 all the way to January 1945. Additionally, 90 further vehicles, Series 1 and 2, were in their very early phase of production, themselves rescheduled for the later months of 1945. 58. 72. Series 0 was also referred to by its German name, Null Series. 73. Production rate was intended to reach 4 per day, with monthly production later rising to 100 vehicles. 58. 50. Apart from stopping Romania's need of having to get supplied with German tanks, another reason why Hitler had agreed with helping the program was a psychological one. The vehicle's name. According to Mark Axworthy, Ion Antonescu had become one of Hitler's most respected allies during the course of the war. 74. This fact had led to Hitler wanting to assist the Maresal development, since their vehicle was named after the Romanian leader, writes Walter Spielberger. 55. See series production for details on the vehicle's characteristics. Planned mixed head Maresal production. As the Maresal had met with approval from German specialists and effective support from Hitler for its real production, a preliminary convention was signed on the 8th of June, 1944 between the Romanian Ministry of Defense and the German OKH for cooperation in expediting mass production. By the time the convention was finalized, the Germans were interested in ordering several dozen Maresal chassis to mount 37mm Rheinmetall anti-aircraft guns, and not only offered Romania full license manufacture of the Hetsa's 160 HP Praga engine for the Maresal, the Western Allies had overrun the Hotchkiss plant, but also, because the two vehicles would then have a high commonality of parts, engine, radio, tracks and sights, offered a license for the entire vehicle. 58. 75. Preliminary talks on the proposed joint Hetsa /Maresal production established that the Germans would supply an uprated 220 HP diesel engine, the armor, the tracks and part of the sights, while the Romanians would build the same parts they were already producing for the Maresal: the chassis, suspension, wheels, controls, part of the sights and the 75mm rear M1943 gun. Deliveries were to be divided equally between Romania and Germany. To familiarize the Romanians with the Hetsa, Hitler decided to give them 53, with a delivery date of 25 August. 76. However, both this delivery and the entire project were halted by King Michael's coup. 58. Influence upon Hetzer. The German Hetzer was influenced by the Maresal. Romania obtained its license to produce the Hetzer itself. The Maresal is credited for having inspired the design of the German Hetzer tank destroyer. 77. 35. While in Germany, the Romanian commission responsible for the Maresal had learned that Germans were also studying the possibility of mounting a strong anti-tank gun on the Panzer 38T light tank chassis. Discussions had led to the conclusion that the Romanians' design solution for the Maresal was correct and that they were more advanced than the Germans in developing their light tank destroyer. 34. 78. This wouldn't last for long, however, since the Rijks industry had a much greater capacity, which led to the Hetzer entering production in April 1944 and seeing action later that same year, while the Maresal was still in its early production phase. 79. Mark Axworthy and Cornel Scaff write that the Hetzer and Maresal were very similar in their armament and general shape. According to their works, as well as contemporary documents, it was German Lieutenant Colonel Wentz who acknowledged in May 1944 that the Hetzer had followed the Maresal's design. 34. 79. Another German official, Engineer Wohlrath of Alket, also stated this. He told the Romanians how the Germans had been searching for solutions to design a light vehicle armed with a strong gun for 2 years, and continue by saying we didn't find it, but you did. 79. According to American historian Stephen Zalaga, the Germans were impressed with the overall layout of the Maresal, and it is credited with being the inspiration for the German Jagd Panzer 38T tank destroyer. 14. Service. On the 10th of May 1944, the Mechanized Troops Command took over responsibility for the project and subsequently created the M Battalion within the 2nd Armored Regiment. The purpose of this battalion was to train would-be Maresal crews and test new models of the vehicle. The M05 prototype was tested preliminary at the end of May, then tested continuously from the 24th of July to the 21st of August. However, there are no mentions about tests of the previous prototypes. Indeed, the M Battalion would have little reason to further test previous prototypes, or train would-be crews by using them. This was due to several reasons. For one, M05 was too technologically different compared to the previous 5 prototypes. M05 was largely Romanian built, while its predecessors used many components from the Soviet T-60 light tank. Furthermore, the armament of all but one of the previous prototypes was entirely different, a 122 howitzer instead of a 75mm anti-tank gun. Finally, the first 200 Maresals which were going to be built were set to follow the design of M05. It is for these reasons that the only reports of Maresal usage after the creation of the M Battalion in May 1944 refer solely to M05, as the previous prototypes were most likely unfit for training crews which were expected to operate in the near future solely on M05 and M06 copies. Testing of M05 continued until the project was terminated by the Soviets on 26 October. 80. The planned 1,000 vehicles were to form 32 anti-tank battalions consisting of 30 Maresals each. 4. The first 12, however, were planned to be sent to a mixed tank battalion, the E Battalion, along with 15 Panzer 38 TS, called T-38 in the Romanian Army. 73. Squads of 4 vehicles were planned, made up of 3 tank destroyers and 1 command vehicle variant. 81. Variants. Tank destroyer, main variant. Prototypes. The Maresal went through a number of prototypes. Each of them was to fix problems shown by the previous prototype, gradually improving the Maresal until it was to become a vehicle worthy of serial production and capable of effectively confronting Soviet armor. First experimental models. The first two models were built in the first half of 1943. One of them used a mortar on a T-60 tank chassis that shot rocket-assisted rounds. The conclusion taken after trials was that neither the armament nor their chassis, in its unmodified state, were adequate for the tank destroyer role. The second model, created for the artillery role, used a Katyusha rocket launcher and was tested on the 16th and the 26th of June and the 22nd of July 1943, being discontinued as well. 32. Front view of the M00 prototype under construction, showing its interior layout. The Romanians had attached a muzzle brake to the 122mm howitzer. M00, the next model, which was the first one to have the general shape of every subsequent prototype, was designated M00. It was created by mounting a 122mm M1938, M30, howitzer, incorrect light scribed as a Putilafabukhof M1904/30 howitzer in Romanian documents, and a 7.92mm ZB30 light machine gun on the chassis of a captured T-60 tank, which had its turret and superstructure replaced by tortoise-shaped sloped armor angled at 45 degrees. The howitzer was modified by the Romanians by the attachment of a muzzle brake, to reduce its recoil. While the German Stu-G3G had its machine gun mounted above the main gun, firing through a hole in the gun mantlet, the Romanians had chosen a rather unusual solution for the Maresal, by also internally mounting the light machine gun, but having it fire through the howitzer's barrel. This feature was to be removed from later prototypes and serial production vehicles, which had firing ports on their side plates. Finished in early July 1943, M00 was tested at the Sudiai Proving Ground later that same month. There was some controversy beforehand, some specialists maintaining that the vehicle could not withstand a test firing and could even turn over because of the gun's recoil. They were wrong, but the trials did reveal a number of deficiencies, such as a failure of the bolts securing the gun mounting, track slippage, a rather weak engine and a cramped interior, among others. However, tests were deemed sufficiently promising to encourage a further development. M00 had a crew of two IOR Iptilisaya /T-type sights and a Ford V8 85 HP engine, along with a Ford V8 gearbox. The T-60 tracks were widened. The prototype weighed 6.7 tons and its armor was 20 to 13 thick. It used a manual steering control system from the T-60. Unlike the following prototypes, M00 did not have a radio as the vehicle was only intended for testing purposes and thus did not need one. M00 retained the T-60's electrics, while the next prototypes used Rojaifa-designed ones. The transmission was also retained from the Soviet light tank. 43, 32, M01, M02 and M03. The M staff, a special committee directly responsible to Antoniciu's cabinet, was entrusted with the Maresal project's supervision from August 1943, because production would require the involvement of an increasing variety of military and industrial agencies. The construction team was allocated a workshop at Rojaifa, and by mid-October 1943, they had constructed three improved models, M01, M02 and M03, all three of them having used the same 122mm howitzer as M00. M01 weighed around 6.7 tons, same as M00, and was built on an enlarged, reinforced T-60 chassis. It used an improved 120 to 140 HP big engine and a 75 HP Opel Blitz gearbox. Controls and suspension were retained from the T60, but improved. It was tested at Sudi on the 23rd of October 1943, along with M02 and M03, in the presence of Marshal Antonicu. M01 proved to have a great